Halo Combat Evolved, the game that launched a legion of fans. What is your first happy memory when you think of this game? For many, it's the game that started it all and made Xbox what it is today. I still remember the first time I set foot on that vastly open and massive ring world. Admittedly, there aren't too many games out there that have had that sort of impact on me. The first time I heard about the game, I was skeptical. Sure, I'd played numerous first-person shooters in the past like Doom and Quake, but as much as I enjoyed them, there was still something repetitive in nature with them. I'd have fun playing one or the other for a few hours, but then I would take a break, and it could be for weeks at a time, and I wouldn't even give it a second thought. Not Halo. Not Bungie's masterpiece of a game. I remember the first time I climbed up on top of a Forerunner structure while myself and a group of Marines fought off dozens of Covenant soldiers as they descended from the sky in their powerful and menacing dropships. It even reminded me a little of that Starship Troopers scene where the arachnids were all swarming on the base that the humans were left to defend. The Marines were one of the first things that drew me to this game. In games like Doom and Quake, it was just you versus the rest of the world. The first game I ever played that had allies fighting by your side was a little Macintosh game known as Ice and Fire. But even there, your soldiers were just generic fighting machines. Not with Halo. The Marines in Halo may be one of the most iconic features of the original game. Each Marine had his own personality. What really stands out is the number of different accents you can hear as you play. This is the United Nations Space Command after all, so you should expect to find fighters of multiple backgrounds, and it really does make the concept of the UNSC come alive. And some of their hilarious quotes still stick with me to this day and literally make me laugh out loud.
What? There's no Covenant here. Think maybe nobody's home. Nice shot! There it is! Contact! Lots of contact! No Covenant. You had to open your mouth. Oh man, we're trapped in here! We're screwed! We're screwed, man!
But of course, as fun as the Marines are in this game, it wouldn't be nearly as good if the enemies we were facing weren't as equally incredible. Of course, I'm talking about the Covenant. Whereas most first-person shooters opted to have several different types of independent monsters you had to face during encounters, the Covenant had only 4 different types of enemies, but they all worked equally together to battle against you and your Marines. You had the Grunt serving as basic cannon fodder with their hilarious remarks. You have the Jackal serving as slightly stronger support units. You have the powerful elites that would lead their troops into battle. And you have the Juggernaut-esque Hunters serving as mini-bosses on the battlefield. That's right, Halo doesn't have bosses, but rather it has boss-like encounters that don't break the overall flow and immersion of the game. That is one of the major standouts of Halo's encounters right there. It always feels organic rather than scripted. You might have the same number of enemies on the battlefield at any given time, but what they do and how they react to you and your allies always changes. Every encounter you play plays out differently every time. I remember spending hours playing Assault on the Control Room just seeing how many different ways I could win a battle. How many other games at the time offered this much replayability? And it wasn't just the Covenant themselves, but also the vehicles they drove. The Ghost felt like if a motorcycle had been given plasma cannons and hover capabilities, while you could also take to the skies in a Covenant Banshee and rain fuel rod hellfire down on your opponents. On the human side, you were given the iconic Warthog, the ultimate all-terrain vehicle with a massive 50 caliber chain gun to mow down any Covenant that stood in your way. And for the ultimate battle experience, you could also commandeer a gigantic Scorpion tank and crush everything that tried to challenge you. The vehicle palette may have been simple in Halo, but it was definitely enough to get the job done. Speaking of simplicity, let's talk about the various weapons that Halo has to offer. While the original game might have the smallest sandbox, it also has the most diverse set of weapons in the series. Games that followed tend to duplicate weapons for the various factions, but not in the original. Each weapon serves its own purpose and has its own special functionality. You have the assault rifle as your standard automatic ballistic weapon. You have your sidearm, which also may be the most powerful, overpowered pistol in any Halo title. You have your standard shotgun for close-range combat, the sniper rifle for taking out enemies from afar, and of course, the rocket launcher to go up against vehicles, hunters, and clusters of various enemies. But it wouldn't be a complete sandbox without adding in the alien weapons as well. The plasma pistol is the most basic of Covenant weapons, but utilizing its overcharged functionality could take out enemy shielding in an instant. The plasma rifle utilizes an automatic function that can also stun your enemies as you pepper them with plasma. And even the Needler, when used correctly, can serve as a type of homing grenade launcher. Even the two newest additions that were added in Halo PC were unique. You had the fuel rod cannon for mortar-based combat, as well as the flamethrower so you could torch your enemies. Everything the Halo sandbox always had to offer felt like it had its own place and did something that none of the other weapons could. This is the one thing to this day that remains unique to the original title. But what made Halo truly stand out for its time was its story. Few first-person shooters back then had a real story that was more complex other than kill the monsters, save who you needed to save, and call it a day. Not with Halo. Halo had an enriching science fiction story that, in my opinion, is still one of the best in the series to date, maybe even of all time. Bungie wastes no time in diving headfirst into the action. As soon as the game starts up, you find yourself aboard the UNSC ship the Pillar of Autumn, drifting towards a massive, unknown ring structure with the Covenant right on your tail. You can feel the sense of urgency in both the captain and the crew, while the ship's AI Cortana boasts the confidence to deal with the alien threat. The tutorial you're given as you find yourself in the shoes of the Master Chief for the first time feels organic to the in-game experience and not like it was simply shoehorned in there for the player's benefit. After you've completed the tutorial for the first time, you hear the sounds of the Covenant banging down the door until it gives way, and the Covenant elite charges in and slays one of your fellow crew members. You can feel the intensity of the scenario as you make your way through the massive vessel, and the Covenant continue to press the attack both on board the ship as well as outside. Then, when you finally make your daring escape to the surface of the mysterious ring world, your adventure really begins. I still remember boarding the Covenant ship for the first time to save Captain Keyes, and my jaw just dropping to the floor at all of the alien scenery. Everything looked so polished and different from everything we had seen before. As the missions go on, you're introduced to more enemies and more combat scenarios that always feel new and challenging, while also feeling both fair and balanced. Each scenario always has multiple options for the player to approach, and you never feel like you're forced into fighting just one way. Again, this is where Halo stands out among its competitors. This is what a semi-open world first-person shooter should feel like. Then you reach the halfway point of the game. The Covenant are scared. As you move through the derelict Forerunner facility, you notice dead Covenant that weren't taken out by you. You come across a terrified Marine that can't tell you from friend or foe. Even the Covenant seem to be frightened and on edge. You come across one of your dead allies and play back his encounter. Then you see them for the first time. The Flood. This is hands down one of the biggest video game twists in history that I can remember. I remember feeling that sudden rush of fear and dread as the doors of the facility begin to crumble and collapse and hordes of Flood begin beelining it right for you. This was completely different than anything the game had thrown at you before. Not just slightly different, not just a new type of combat. This was a complete 180 that made you rethink how you had to play the game. You had three basic types of Flood to deal with. the legions of infection forms that would swarm you from all directions, the carrier forms that would waddle towards you and explode while also spitting out even more infection forms, and of course, you had the combat forms capable of running at great speeds, jumping at great heights, utilizing powerful melee attacks, and wielding all weapons, both human and Covenant alike, and yes, that includes the devastating rocket launcher. You meet a bubbly little orb friend that at first seems like he's there to help you, but after trudging through the treacherous library, you learn of the Monitor's true intent. Then, he turns his sentinels on you too, effectively creating 3 factions that are now all out to get you as well as each other. This was the first time I'd ever seen Team AI versus Team AI combat in any game, which opened up the possibilities for endless combat. You now had more options on which fights you could engage and which ones you could at least try to avoid. And you're doing all this as Halo's incredible musical score by Marty O'Donnell is completely rocking you senseless. It's hard to deny just how excellent the music is in this game. Every track, even the ambience in the swamps or the gentle hum of the Covenant ship are memorable scores that stick with you for the ages. So much love and care went into crafting each and every musical piece that it officially became the very first video game soundtrack that I'd ever purchased. That was one of the downsides that came to playing the game's multiplayer. Without the music of the campaign, it felt almost hollow and empty. Fortunately, the incredible map design and simple 2-gun plus grenades gameplay are so good, you forget about it within the first few seconds. The combat this game has to offer is simply astounding. The 2-gun design forces you to choose your weapons carefully while weighing each one's strengths and weaknesses. Even the grenades are unique, as one type allows for a bigger boom, while the other can stick directly to your enemies. Combined with the iconic map designs of places like Blood Gulch, Sidewinder, and Battle Creek, and you have a recipe for success. Throughout this piece, I've been trying really hard just to think of one negative aspect about this game, and it's nearly impossible. Everything about it looks and feels so perfect. If I had to pick something, and I mean I'm really trying here, it's that it doesn't include the features of some of the games that came after it. But that's hardly a weakness, as Halo is the game that started it all and was the basis for all great things to come for the series in the future. And because of all that, it's no doubt in my mind that Halo Combat Evolved is absolutely a collector's item. Halo Combat Evolved has given me a lot of great memories over the years, and I'd love for you to share some of your own favorite Halo memories down in the comments section below. And I'd like to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy day to sit down and watch this video. I really do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, I hope you'll consider subscribing for more great content right here on MythicTyrant.com. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful week. I'll catch you all right back here next time, and as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.